I was taken to a planet we barely know. I was taken from Earth by an alien to witness a vision. This was not a trip. Before we dive deeper, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Grab yourself a warm drink, maybe a cup of tea, or just some water, and sit back as we begin this journey together. It was a revelation. What I saw in TRAPPIST-1E isn't about what life is like on another world, but about the true end point of the human species, a truth so monumental that it calls into question the very purpose of our existence. This vision could be proof of our final ascension or confirmation of a great warning prophecy. What was seen is too grand to be called a nightmare and too complex to be called hope. I have the truth about where we're being led. The question is, can you handle the truth that defines the destiny of humanity? Elias was 36 years old and had an absolutely ordinary life, a programmer in Boston, working remotely in a small apartment with few friends. The only thing that set him apart was that he had meditated every day for the past 5 years. Always at 11 at night, always in the same chair near the window. He wasn't esoteric or obsessed with spirituality. He simply felt he needed those 20 minutes of silence before bed, as if something inside him demanded that daily pause. That September night, he was meditating as usual, eyes closed, breath controlled, mind quiet, when he felt it, a presence, not physical, but unmistakable, like when someone enters the room and you know without looking. He slowly opened his eyes. The room was empty, but the feeling remained stronger now coming from outside. He turned to the window and saw the light, silvery blue growing in intensity coming from above, silent, illuminating the entire apartment with a glow that cast no shadows. Elias stood up, his legs trembling, approached the window, looked up, and there it was. A spaceship 3, maybe 4 meters above the building or small, no bigger than a van, organic shape, surface as smooth as liquid mercury, without visible seams, without flashing lights like in movies, just that blue glow emanating from it as if the structure itself were luminescent. He should have screamed, "Run!" called someone any normal reaction. But he did none of that. He just stood there looking as the light enveloped him, warm, almost welcoming, and felt his body being pulled, not violently, but gently, as if gravity had reversed just for him. And Elias, against all logic, against all survival instinct, didn't resist. He just thought with strange clarity, "Okay, let's see where this goes." And he let himself go. The transition was instantaneous. There was no corridor of light, no sensation of movement. He was looking out the apartment window, and the next second he was inside the ship, materialized in a space that seemed larger than the exterior suggested. The walls were translucent, glowing softly, pulsating as if they were alive. And there, 3 meters away, was he. The alien was tall, about 2 meters, thin but not frail, with reddish golden skin, a slightly elongated head, large almond-shaped eyes, golden like its skin with no visible white. And when it looked at Elias, something happened. Elias heard, not with his ears, but directly in his mind, a voice that was more feeling than words. "Fear not. I have chosen you to witness, to see what needs to be seen, to tell what needs to be told." Elias tried to speak, his throat dry, finally managing to witness what? "Where are you taking me?" The alien didn't answer immediately, only turned around, and the front wall of the ship became transparent or disappeared. Elias couldn't tell for sure. "Future," the mental voice said simply. "I will show you the future of your species, but you need to see it with your own eyes, because words wouldn't be enough, they wouldn't be believed." The ship was already moving. Elias felt it energetically, but not physically, as if his body had been disconnected from inertia. Through the transparent wall, he saw the Earth rapidly shrinking, Boston turning into a point of light, a continent appearing, the entire planet visible in seconds, the moon passing to the right, Mars as a distant red spot. And then something changed. Reality bent, space compressed, stars stretched into lines, and Elias felt he was passing through something. He didn't know what, only that the physical laws he knew had been temporarily suspended. Darkness, complete. Then light again, but different. A gigantic red star occupying a quarter of the entire horizon, motionless in the sky, and below it, a planet that made Elias forget to breathe for 5 full seconds. The sky was deep, rich, burgundy red like dark wine illuminated from within, and scattered across this sky were 6 planets, enormous, clearly visible, some as large as the full moon on Earth, others smaller but still impressive, and each with a different color: deep blues, earthy browns, pale grays. The ship descended through the red atmosphere, gradients of crimson to burgundy to purple, and the surface appeared. Elias saw vegetation, but not green, all in shades of red, burgundy, purple, crimson, entire forests undulating in the wind in colors Earth had never known. There was ocean, perfectly mirrored, reflecting the red sky like still liquid glass, and, at the edge of that ocean, structures, not buildings in the conventional sense, but organic constructions that seemed to have grown from the ground rather than been erected. Towers curving gracefully, flowing bridges connecting buildings, all in golden and amber tones, shimmering softly. The ship landed silently without impact. It simply stopped moving, and the door opened, releasing air that Elias instinctively inhaled, expecting not to be able to breathe. But the air was perfect, dense with a faint scent of ozone mixed with something floral that he couldn't identify. "Go out," the inner voice instructed. "Explore, observe, understand." Elias descended, his feet touching a surface that seemed like crystal but felt as soft as grass, resilient, pleasant, and looked around under that perpetual red light of the giant star that never moved. And then he saw them approaching, walking with inhuman grace, and Elias realized, with growing shock, that they were human, clearly human in basic structure, but different, evolved skin, with that same reddish, golden tone, large and deep eyes, movements too fluid. And when the first of them, a woman, stopped in front of him and smiled without opening her mouth, Elias felt something impossible, felt her emotion directly without words, without gestures, just pure feeling being transmitted from mind to mind. "Welcome, brother, from the past." Elias staggered. "You're in my head. How are you doing this?" And she just smiled more, looked at the alien who had brought him, and Elias heard the communication between them, felt it. They weren't words, but complex emotions exchanged instantly, and understood with horror or fascination. He still didn't know which, that there, in that impossible place, everyone communicated like that telepathically, emotionally, with total transparency, without the possibility of lying, without the ability to hide intentions. The alien gently touched his shoulder. "Come now. There's much to show you, little time. You need to see everything before returning. You need to understand what this place is, where you came from, and why your species is destined to end up here if you choose the right path, or never arrive if you choose the wrong one." Elias followed, his legs still trembling, his mind exploding with questions he couldn't formulate. As he walked through that impossible city under an eternal red sky, surrounded by humans who were no longer exactly human on a planet 40 light-years from Earth, a real planet called TRAPPIST-1E, which scientists had already detected but didn't know, had no idea what truly existed there. And Elias still didn't know if what he was about to discover was humanity's greatest hope or its most terrifying final warning. They walked in silence. Elias between the alien and the golden-skinned woman through streets that weren't exactly streets but organic paths that seemed to adjust beneath their feet, soft and resilient. The city, if it could be called a city, was completely silent in the verbal sense. No one spoke, but Elias felt communication happening around him, subtle waves of emotion passing between people. Joy here, curiosity there, constant love permeating everything like an inescapable background frequency. There were hundreds of them, these evolved humans walking unhurriedly, interacting without words. And Elias noticed something unsettling. No one seemed stressed, no one walked fast, no one looked down, avoiding eye contact as in any city on Earth. Everyone moved with deliberate grace, aware of each other in a way that seemed impossible. Children ran among the adults, these at least making sounds, universal laughter that Elias recognized, and he saw adults watching tenderly. But not just the parents, all adults, as if all the children belong to everyone. They belong. The woman's inner voice responded to Elias's unspoken thought, making him jump slightly. Here, there is no possession, not of things, nor of people. Children are cared for by the entire community. Relationships have no jealousy because when you feel love from the other directly, insecurity makes no sense. Private property doesn't exist because we manifest what we need. Elias stopped walking. Wait, manifest? How? Are you saying they create things out of nothing? She smiled and pointed to a nearby structure, something between an altar and a machine, its crystalline surface shimmering softly. She approached, placed her hand on the crystal, closed her eyes for 3 seconds, and when she pulled her hand away, there was fruit there, red and strange, but clearly fruit, real, solid, which she picked up and offered to Elias. Molecular replicator, she explained mentally. Technology that responds to conscious intention, thinks clearly about what it needs with a feeling of gratitude, and its atomic structure reorganizes itself, creating objects, food, clothing, tools, everything except living beings. Those still need to be born naturally. Elias picked up the fruit with a trembling hand, which means it violates all the laws of conservation of energy that I know. The alien finally spoke. It doesn't violate them. It just uses energy in a way that your science doesn't yet understand. The quantum vacuum contains infinite energy. You just need to know how to access it. And elevated consciousness is key. That's why your civilization doesn't have it yet. A very low frequency full of fear and doubt. Conscious manifestation requires absolute certainty and gratitude, emotions that Earth rarely feels collectively. They continued walking and Elias saw more. He saw areas that looked like gardens, but with vegetation and impossible shades. He saw what could be a school, but without a teacher at the front, only children in a circle, apparently absorbing knowledge telepathically from an adult in the center. He saw something like a hospital, but without beds or equipment, only rooms with crystals where people lay while others placed hands on them, healing through what energy Elias didn't know, and each thing he saw made less and more sense simultaneously. They passed through an open area, perhaps a plaza, and in the center was an enormous crystalline structure 10 meters high, pulsating with internal light, rhythmic like a heartbeat, and people touching it reverently, eyes closed, expressions of silent ecstasy. "What is that?" Elias asked aloud, still unaccustomed to telepathy. "Planetary connection," the woman replied. "TRAPPIST-1E is conscious, a massive living being, and we feel the planet. The planet feels us. Total symbiosis. When we touch the crystal, we merge consciousness with planetary consciousness. We feel what the planet feels. Billions of years of memory, ancient wisdom, guidance." Elias felt dizzy. "Are you saying that the planet, the entire planet, is alive and conscious?" The alien replied patiently. "All planets are Earth too. Only terrestrial humanity hasn't evolved the senses to perceive it. Here we perceive it and we live in harmony because when you feel the planet suffering from pollution or violence, it causes pain and becomes impossible. Radical empathy extends not only to people, but to the entire world." They arrived at the larger building in the city center, a structure that rose perhaps 50 meters, entirely transparent in some sections, opaque in others, and entered through an opening that had no door, only opening as they approached. The interior was vast, the ceiling too high to see clearly in the diffuse red light, and in the center, a circular platform gleamed with inscriptions that seemed alive, subtly changing. "Hall of Memory," the alien announced. "Here, I show you the complete history where your species came from, why you are where you are, and exactly how you arrived here on this planet in this reality. But be warned, what you will see will change everything you think you know about human destiny." Elias climbed onto the platform, legs trembling, heart racing, and as soon as both feet touched the surface, the world around him vanished. And he was where? Not in the ship, not on the planet, but inside a vision, a hologram, but more real than reality, immersive, three-dimensional. And he saw Earth, not modern Earth, but primitive Earth. Tribes, hunting, killing, surviving brutally. And he saw a spark, small but present, the first time a human helped another without direct gain. The first act of pure compassion. And the alien narrated mentally. Here it began, this spark. Love born amidst fear. The vision accelerated. civilizations emerging, pyramids, temples, and shining figures walking among humans, Buddha under a tree, Jesus preaching to multitudes, Krishna teaching Arjuna, all trying to teach the same thing: unity, love, the end of separation. But Elias saw resistance, fear, the human ego repeatedly rejecting the truth. The vision darkened, the industrial age arriving, world wars, the Holocaust, atomic bombs, pollution engulfing the planet, and Elias felt the despair of that period. Humanity at its darkest point, almost completely destroying itself. But then change, subtle but real, light returning. And Elias saw the present, saw people meditating globally, the internet connecting minds, spirituality resurging, young people questioning materialism, peace movements, environmentalism. And the alien said, "This is the turning point now. Your time, the moment where humanity chooses, continues in fear and self-destructs, or chooses love and evolves. Free will always has been, always will be, but the choice needs to be made soon. The window doesn't stay open forever." The vision continued, the future appearing. 200 years ahead, Elias saw chaos, divisions, but also advancements. First official contact with extraterrestrials, governments eventually uniting, wars ending not by force, but by collective exhaustion and awakening. 500 years ahead, a green earth again. Clean, peaceful technology and spirituality finally fused. 1,000 years ahead, telepathic humans, a moneyless society, abundance through manifestation. And Elias saw clearly critical mass being reached. 51% of humanity at a high frequency. And then, a quantum leap, collective consciousnesses, transitioning not in ships but in frequency. Reborn not on Earth, but here in TRAPPIST-1E, in evolved bodies, in a ready society. The vision ended abruptly, and Elias fell to his knees on the platform, tears streaming down his face without knowing why. He understood, finally understood what that place was. Not an alien colony, but human destiny, a literal future waiting. And the question burning in his mind exploded aloud. When? When does this happen? How many generations? The alien helped Elias to his feet, a gentle but firm touch, and answered the question that still echoed in the air. It's not a question of when, in the way you think. There's no fixed date. It's a question of collective frequency. When 51% of humanity vibrates in love instead of fear, the transition happens automatically. It could be 500 years, it could be 5,000. It depends on the daily choices of billions of people. Every thought, every action, every choice between love and fear accelerates or delays it. Elias wiped away tears, still processing. So, it's not inevitable we might never get here. The alien was quiet for a long moment before answering. Technically, no. If humanity chooses consistent self-destruction, if the frequency drops instead of rising, the transition doesn't happen. But we've seen thousands of civilizations on thousands of planets. The pattern repeats itself. Intelligent species always reach this point, the moment of choice. And most, not all, but most eventually choose evolution because the pain of separation becomes unbearable and love becomes the only logical way out. The golden-skinned woman approached, touched Elias's chest lightly, and he felt a wave of something, not exactly emotion, but emotional information, knowledge being transmitted through touch. She spoke mentally. You ask what you can do, how to accelerate. There are practices, 5 main ones. If followed consistently, they raise personal frequency, and when millions raise personal frequency, planetary frequency rises, an inevitable ripple effect. Elias felt the instructions being downloaded directly into his mind, not as memorized words, but as profound understanding. And he knew first to practice radical empathy. When someone irritates or offends you, stop. Feel what that person feels, the pain behind the anger, the fear behind the attack. When you fully understand, judgment dies and compassion is born. Doing this transforms not only you but the person as well because the frequency of compassion is contagious. Secondly, raise your daily frequency through gratitude. Not superficial gratitude, but gratitude felt deeply. Every day, Find 3 things to be grateful for, and feel gratitude throughout your entire body. Don't just think it, feel it. Because feeling changes body chemistry. Body chemistry changes energy frequency. Energy frequency attracts corresponding realities. The law of attraction is not a belief. It's quantum physics not yet fully understood by earthly science. Third, see unity in everything. Separation is a persistent illusion. When you look at an enemy, see yourself in different circumstances. When you see suffering, recognize that it is your suffering too, because all are a fragmented organism in billions of points of consciousness. Earth is body, humans are cells. When cells fight among themselves, the body becomes ill. When cells cooperate, the body prospers. Fourth, manifest consciously. Thoughts literally create reality, not metaphorically. Sustained focus with strong emotion collapses quantum possibilities into physical realities. Stop focusing on fears, wars, and catastrophes, because attention is creative energy. Focus on the world you desire. Peace, abundance, unity. See clearly, feel deeply, and contribute to the collective manifestation of that future. Fifth, love unconditionally. Not love as an emotion dependent on reciprocation, but love as a constant state of being. A conscious choice to want good regardless of reciprocity. This is the highest possible frequency, and when maintained consistently, it transforms not only your life, but the lives of those around you through resonance. People feel it even without understanding, and they begin to change as well. Elias absorbed everything, his mind recording every word, every feeling, and asked, "But this takes generations, thousands of years. I will never see that future. Why show me something I will never live?" The woman smiled, her expression enigmatic, and said, "Who said you won't live it? Death is not the end. It's a transition. Consciousness doesn't die. It only changes form. You live this life on Earth, then you disincarnate, process existence, and when you're ready, you're reborn. Perhaps on Earth again, perhaps here if the frequency is high enough." Reincarnation is not a belief. It's a universal mechanism of consciousness, evolving through multiple experiences. At that moment, another figure approached. An old man, perhaps not old, but an elder in the sense of wisdom, not age, because Elias couldn't determine his exact age. A timeless face, eyes as deep as wells, and everyone around bowed slightly. A reverence not subservient, but respectful. The elder walked directly to Elias, stopped inches away, and without asking permission, placed his hand on his chest. A touch that burned, not physically, but energetically. And Elias saw, not with his eyes, but with something deeper. He saw his entire life pass in seconds. A lonely childhood, bullying at school, a first love ending painfully, the death of his father, persistent loneliness, the choice to meditate as a last resort against depression, 5 years of daily practice slowly transforming his inner self. And then he saw the future, not fixed, but possible. He saw himself old in his 80 seconds on Earth, a frail body but a clear mind. Meditating for the last time, his breath stopping, his consciousness leaving his body, floating, processing life in an intermediate dimension where time does not exist, reviewing choices, lessons, failures, successes without judgment, only understanding and then choosing, consciously choosing to return but not to Earth, choosing to be reborn here in TRAPPIST-1E in a golden body and large eyes emerging into a telepathic society already ready because inner work was done in the previous life. The vision ended and the elder removed his hand, his eyes meeting Elias's, and for the first time, Elias heard a verbal voice and deep and beautiful speaking, not telepathically but with real sound. This is your future if you choose it. Not a guarantee, but a real possibility. Every moment of love, instead of fear, brings you closer to this reality. Every act of compassion raises your frequency. Every practice of gratitude builds bridges. And when your earthly body finally rests, your consciousness will be ready to take the next leap. Not everyone gets here. Some need more turns on Earth, more lessons, more growth. But you are close. That is why you were chosen to see, to remember when you return. Elias felt something breaking inside. Not painful, but liberating, as if a wall he didn't know existed had fallen. And he asked in a trembling voice, "How will I remember when I return to Earth? Will I forget all this? Will I wake up thinking it was a dream or a hallucination?" The alien said, "You won't forget completely. Rational memory may doubt, but something deeper will know. And when you tell the story to others, the truth in your voice will be undeniable. Some will hear only a story, others will hear a calling, and these will change. Small changes creating waves, waves creating tides, tides transforming the planet." The golden-skinned woman gently touched Elias's arm, preventing him from entering the ship. "Not yet," she thought to herself. "Seeing isn't enough. You need to experience it, feel it firsthand as we live. Only then will you truly understand what matters when you return." Elias looked at the alien, who nodded silently, and followed the woman back to the city. Now, not as an observer, but as a temporary participant. She led him to an area that seemed residential, smaller structures organically clustered around shared gardens, and they entered one through a wall that simply opened at the touch. The interior was spacious but minimalist, almost empty compared to earthly houses with no furniture except for a few cushioned platforms for sitting or lying down. No decorations beyond crystals that shimmered softly emitting ambient light. "We don't need much," she explained, "because we don't accumulate. When we need something, we manifest it. When we no longer need it, we dematerialize it, returning atoms to the field. Possession is a concept that doesn't exist here. Even these dwellings don't belong to anyone. We use them while we resonate with the energy of the space. Then another uses them, a constant flow without attachment." 3 other people entered, 2 women and a man, all with that same inhuman grace. And Elias noticed something strange in the dynamic. The 3 touched the woman who had brought him with obvious affection. Kisses on the forehead, long hugs, and she reciprocated equally. And then they touched each other in the same way. And Elias understood. They are all together, a relationship not dual but multiple, and no one seemed jealous or uncomfortable. The woman caught his thought and smiled here. Love is not limited or possessive. We love deeply, intimately, because when you feel the other's love telepathically, insecurity cannot exist. You know exactly what they feel. There is no doubt. There is no fear of abandonment. Jealousy is born of fear, and fear does not survive in total transparency. They sat in a circle, Elias included, and began something that looked like a meal but wasn't. There was no visible food initially, and then each placed their hand on a central crystal. And Elias saw, literally saw, food materializing, red and purple fruits, something like bread, but with a different texture. Liquid in containers that seemed to have grown there in that instant. "Eat," the woman offered. "It not only nourishes the body but carries a frequency of collective gratitude. Every atom was arranged with loving intention. You will feel the difference." Elias hesitantly picked up a fruit, bit into it, and the flavor exploded. Not just taste, but sensation, warmth in his chest, peace, as if he were eating solidified emotion. And he understood food here is not just physical nutrition, it's energetic, too. During the meal, they conversed, not verbally, but telepathically, and Elias was included in the collective mental conversation. He didn't fully understand, but picked up fragments. They were discussing something, a project perhaps, a new building in the city, and he realized there was no heated debate, no competing egos, just an exchange of perspectives, sensing each other's points of view until consensus emerged naturally. No voting, no hierarchy, just mutual understanding, leading to the decision everyone felt was right. "How do you deal with disagreement?" Elias asked aloud, still not comfortable with pure telepathy. "And what if someone strongly disagrees?" The man in the group replied, "It rarely happens because when you feel the emotion behind the other person's opinion, you understand the deep motivation, and usually that motivation is love disguised in different forms. But when genuine disagreement occurs, we sit together, not to debate, but to temporarily merge consciousnesses. A deep telepathic union where we experience each other's perspective completely. And in that state, the right decision always emerges because individual selfishness dissolves into collective wisdom." It's impossible to maintain a selfish position when you feel collective well-being as your own. After eating, the woman took Elias to an outdoor area where a group of children were playing, supervised by several adults. Elias noticed that the adults weren't necessarily parents. Everyone cared for all the children equally, and he asked about it. She replied, "Children are born from specific unions. Yes, biology still requires that, but we raise them collectively because children belong to the entire community, not just two individuals. Biological parents have a special but not exclusive bond. All adults are mentors, protectors, and educators, and children grow up feeling loved by the entire village, not just their nuclear family. This creates deep security, a true sense of belonging. Nobody feels abandoned or alone because literally the whole community is family." Elias saw a child fall and hurt her knee, began to cry, and immediately 5 adults approached. Not just one, but 5, all placing their hands on the child. Elias felt, even though he wasn't a complete telepath, a wave of love and healing emanating from them, and the child's crying stopped in seconds, not because it was silenced, but because the pain was literally dissolved through collective energy. She got up laughing and went back to playing. "Healing here is natural," the woman explained. "Everyone learns it from a young age. Intentional touch with love moves energy. Energy moves matter. Wounds heal quickly. Illnesses rarely occur because the body at a high frequency doesn't get sick. And when it does, the community heals together, never alone." They walked to an area that seemed to be a center of creation, artists at work. But the art was different. Sculptures that subtly changed shape, as if breathing. Music not played by instruments, but emanating from crystals that responded to the composer's emotions. Holographic paintings floating 3-dimensionally in the air. "Work here isn't an obligation," the woman said. "It's an expression of the soul. Each person follows their natural passion, contributes with unique gifts. There's no coercion because, when basic needs are met through expression, work becomes art, not survival. You do what you love because not doing it would be denying your own essence. And each person's contribution is valued not by how much they produce, but by the love they put into it." Elias saw a man creating something, a sculpture perhaps, hands moving over material that looked like clay but shone, and he asked, "But what if someone doesn't want to contribute? If they only want to receive without giving?" The woman remained quiet, thinking, then replied, "That doesn't happen here because laziness is a symptom of disconnection. When you're connected to purpose and community, contributing is natural joy, not a burden." But in the early stages of civilizational evolution, yes, there were some who resisted, and they were loved nonetheless. The community met their needs without judgment, and eventually feeling unconditional love and seeing the joy of others in contributing. They naturally chose to participate. Punishment or coercion never works. Only persistent love transforms. They arrived in a public area where Elias saw something extraordinary. 2 people in disagreement. He could feel the tension between them. Even though he couldn't perceive telepathic details, a group formed a circle around them, including the 2 in conflict, and everyone placed their hands on each other, creating a physical current. Elias saw visible energy, not imagined, but literally visible, like a miniature aurora borealis flowing between them all. The 2 in conflict began to relax, their expressions softening, and then they embraced. The conflict dissolved, not through argument, but through an energetic union that made them both feel each other's pain and made it impossible to hold on to anger. "That's how it works," the woman said softly. "When everyone feels everyone else's pain, conflict can't last. You can't hate someone whose pain you feel as your own. You can't hurt someone whose suffering resonates in your own body. Telepathic transparency forces radical empathy. And radical empathy makes violence impossible. That's why we don't have crimes, we don't have wars, we don't have prisons. Because in a society where lying is impossible and feelings are transparent, intentional evil simply cannot exist. It would be like trying to hurt your own arm. The pain would be yours, too." Elias felt tears again, not of sadness, but of something greater, perhaps longing, seeing what humanity could be, should be. And he asked, How long did it take you from primitive times until now? How many generations? The woman looked at the red sky at the sister planets hanging there eternally, and replied, "We are not originally from this planet. We came from Earth. As I said before, this is the human future. Our ancestors were terrestrial beings who made the transition millions of years. Oh, in your linear time, but time is relative. Past, present, future coexist. We exist now, waiting for you in the past to make choices that lead to here. Non-linear cause and effect. Destiny pulling origin as much as origin pushes destiny." Elias processed this, his mind battling impossible physics, and she continued, "You are in the middle of the journey. Your time is crucial. A turning point. If you collectively choose love in the coming centuries, the transition will eventually happen. If you choose fear and destruction, the timeline changes. This future ceases to exist for you. Other civilizations occupy this space. The universe doesn't force destinies, it only offers possibilities, and collective consciousness chooses which possibility collapses into reality." The giant red sun remained motionless on the horizon, perpetual light without dawn or dusk, and Elias understood that he was in the eternal twilight zone, a ring between day and night where the temperature allowed life and everything there, that entire impossible civilization, that entire society of transparent love, existed in that delicate balance, hanging between extremes, just as earthly humanity hung between self-destruction and evolution. Elias stopped walking, his mind teeming with darker questions he could no longer suppress, and spoke abruptly. "But what about free will? What if someone wants to do harm, chooses violence? You've removed the capacity for choice by making evil impossible. Isn't that prison disguised as paradise?" The woman didn't seem offended. She simply turned calmly. "Free will remains intact. You may want to do harm, but when you feel the pain you would cause another as if it were your own, the choice naturally changes. It's not the removal of choice, but the expansion of consequence. On Earth, you can hurt without feeling the full impact. Separation allows cruelty. Here, connection reveals truth, and the truth is that hurting another is hurting yourself. It always has been. You just didn't feel it directly. But that means, Elias pressed that bad simply don't exist here. They've been filtered out. Only the good ones arrive. And the others, the violent ones, the selfish ones, what happens to them?" The alien who had remained silent finally spoke. "They reincarnate again on Earth or similar planets. Low frequency attracts low frequency experiences. It's not punishment, but resonance. Consciousness gravitates to environments that correspond to its level of evolution. Forcing someone not ready into a telepathic society would be torture for them and for the community. So they return to learn the lessons they still need for as many lives as necessary, without judgment, only growth at their own pace." "And how many never arrive here?" Elias asked. "How many remain trapped in an endless cycle of violence and reincarnation?" The woman replied softly. "Most eventually evolve. It may take 1,000 lives, 10,000, but consciousness tends toward increasing complexity, toward increasing love, because the pain of separation eventually becomes unbearable, and the only relief is union. But yes, some, rare, but they exist, choose stagnation so persistently that they eventually fragment. Consciousness dissolves back into the quantum field. Not extinction, but de-individualization, a complete reset, and they begin again as a new consciousness in a primitive life form." Elias felt a chill. "So, there are worse fates than not evolving. Is there real dissolution?" The alien confirmed. "The universe doesn't force anyone to evolve. But infinite stagnation is also impossible. Energy needs to flow. Consciousness that refuses to grow eventually collapses under its own weight. It's not divine punishment, but natural law like water that needs to flow or it rots. Consciousness needs to evolve or it dissolves. That's why we say choice is urgent, not to instill fear, but to communicate reality. Free will includes the freedom to choose non-existence through persistent refusal to grow." Elias took a deep breath. He needed to ask the next question, even though he feared the answer. Have entire civilizations, entire planets already chosen the wrong path, already self-destructed before arriving here? The alien gestured, and the wall of the nearby building became translucent, projecting images. You don't need to enter the Hall of Memory to see this. I can show you here. Images appeared. Three-dimensional holograms of planets, some resembling Earth, others alien, and a telepathic narrative flowed. This was Kepler 442b, a civilization that developed nuclear technology before developing wisdom. They waged war until the planet became uninhabitable. Radiation killed 98%. The remaining 2% survived underground for generations, but eventually degenerated, lost knowledge, and reverted to primitivism. It will take millions of years for the planet to heal and for intelligent life to re-emerge, if it ever does. A complete cycle lost by a choice of fear over love. The image changed. Another planet. This one, covered in machines, metallic structures as far as the eye could see. This was HD 4307G, a civilization that chose technological transcendence without spiritual evolution. They created artificial intelligence, merging consciousness with machines, believing this was the next evolutionary step. But they lost empathy in the process. They became efficient but empty, eventually ceasing to reproduce because the emotional connection necessary for intimacy had been deleted as inefficient. The population declined to extinction. Now only empty machines operating purposeless protocols. A dead planet ruled by soulless computers. Third image. A planet that seemed like paradise. Blue oceans, green forests, beautiful cities. This was Giza 667 CC, a civilization that almost succeeded. They came close to the transition, developed telepathy, eliminated wars, but failed in the last step. They became complacent, believed that evolution was complete, stopped growing spiritually. Frequency stagnated, and when a massive comet hit the planet without warning, they did not have a high enough consciousness to perceive danger beforehand or manifest collective protection. Mass extinction, only 10% survived, and those who survived regressed technologically. Now they are starting from scratch. Thousands of years of progress lost due to complacency. The images faded, and the alien looked directly at Elias. Hence the urgency, not to pressure, but to inform. Transition is not guaranteed. It requires sustained conscious effort. Your civilization is at a critical juncture. Technology is accelerating exponentially. Wisdom is not keeping pace. You have weapons that can destroy the planet. But collective consciousness is still tribal, still separated. This discrepancy is dangerous. The window to choose love is open but will not remain open indefinitely. Planetary physics has limits. If you cross certain thresholds of environmental destruction or nuclear war, transition becomes impossible, no matter how many want to evolve, because there will not be a habitable planet or enough physical bodies to continue the journey. Elias felt the weight of it, a massive responsibility, and asked in a small voice, "So, by telling the story, sharing what I saw, does it really make a difference? Or is it a useless drop in the ocean?" The woman gently touched his face. Each awakened consciousness raises a measurable collective field. It's not a metaphor. Your quantum physicists are beginning to detect this. Coherence in meditating groups, reduction of crime in cities. When critical mass meditates, a real morphogenetic field, connecting all minds, you will tell the story. Hundreds of thousands will listen. Thousands will awaken. Those thousands will influence millions. An unstoppable ripple effect. You don't save humanity alone, but you participate in collective salvation, and everyone's participation is essential. Remove one piece, and the puzzle is incomplete. The alien touched Elias's shoulder. Now, yes, it's time. He'd learned everything he could absorb in one visit. More than that would overwhelm a human mind not yet adapted to processing multidimensional realities. Come, ship awaits. They walked for the last time through that impossible city. Elias, desperately memorizing every detail. Eternal red light, organic constructions, graceful people moving in telepathic silence, children laughing, that penetrating sense of peace and belonging that Earth had never known, and he felt something tearing inside. He didn't want to leave. For the first time in 36 years, he felt he belonged somewhere, and that place was 40 light-years from home. The golden-skinned woman walked with them to the ship, and before Elias entered, she held both his hands, her golden eyes meeting his earthly brown ones, and spoke telepathically with an intensity that made Elias stagger. "Remember, brother, you are not alone on this mission. There are thousands like you being prepared simultaneously around the earth, some through physical contact like this, others through dreams, visions, downloads during meditation, all receiving the same essential message in different forms. You are a network being activated. When you return, you will feel a connection with others, even without knowing them physically. You will recognize them by their gaze, by their frequency, and together you will plant seeds that will become a forest." Elias entered the ship, turned to wave, and saw not only the woman, but hundreds of them. Now the entire community gathered in silent farewell, and felt a wave of collective love so intense that he fell to his knees. Not romantic or familiar love, but something greater. Love is the fundamental force of the universe, unconditional, eternal, and he knew he would never be the same again. Impossible to be touched by that and remain untouched. The door closed. The wall became transparent. The ship ascended gently. The city diminished. The red planet receded, and Elias saw for the last time those 6 sister planets hanging in the sky like eternal watchmen. And then leap, reality bending, stars stretching, plunge through something that had no name in terrestrial physics. Silence during the journey, the alien letting Elias process. And Elias looked at his own hands as if they were strange, as if his earthly body were too tight after experiencing something greater. And he thought, how will I live knowing that this exists? How will I wake up every day in a world of separation and violence and pretend I didn't see what I saw, didn't feel what I felt? The alien answered without Elias having asked aloud, "You will not pretend. You must not pretend. You will carry. Truth is an inner beacon, and some days it will be heavy. You will see human cruelty, and it hurts more now because you know it doesn't have to be this way. But other days you will see acts of kindness and recognize sparks of the future already present, already manifesting. And these moments will sustain hope." Earth appeared blue and white and familiar, but also strange now, fragile, small. And Elias saw city lights like bright wounds in the darkness, light pollution blocking stars. And he thought of TRAPPIST-1E, where stars were visible and venerated, where artificial light existed but in harmony with natural darkness. And he felt the first pang of what would be a permanent longing for a place that technically hasn't even come to exist for humanity yet. They descended over Boston, his apartment visible below. 3:00 inches the morning now. 4 hours had passed for him, but the clock would say it was only 20 minutes. Relative time, an inevitable distortion when traversing folds in space. Blue light enveloped him again. The same light that had taken him and Elias materialized in the living room, exactly where he had been meditating. The candle, still burning in the same spot as if nothing had happened. But everything had happened. Absolutely everything. He ran to the window, looked up, the ship still hovering silently, and heard the alien's last telepathic message. "Don't look for physical proof. You won't find any. No photos, no artifacts, only memory and inner truth. That's how it needs to be, because proof removes the need for faith, and faith is a choice that raises frequency. Forcing belief through undeniable evidence would violate free will. So, you will only have history and conviction, and that will be enough for those who are ready to listen." The craft accelerated vertically, turned into a point of light, disappeared, and Elias was left alone in the room at 3:15 on a typical Tuesday morning in Boston. A typical programmer in a typical apartment. Except that nothing was more typical. Nothing ever would be. He sat in the meditation chair, body trembling, mind racing. Tried to meditate as he did every day, but it was impossible. Thoughts exploding in all directions, images of TRAPPIST-1E burning behind closed eyelids, the sensation of telepathic love still echoing in his chest like the phantom pain of an amputated limb. He didn't sleep that night. He sat processing, and when the sun rose over Boston, a yellow light so different from the red light he had grown accustomed to in hours. He looked at the waking city, people going to work, traffic jams, each one isolated in a separate car and a separate mind. No one feeling anyone else. Absolute separation accepted as normal. And Elias cried not from sadness but from something more complex. Compassion, perhaps. Seeing humanity as a lost child who doesn't know what path home exists, what home awaits, what evolution is possible. The first few days were impossible. He went to work because he had bills to pay. Sat in front of the computer typing code as he always did. But it seemed absurd now, pushing pixels on the screen while the entire universe pulsed with greater meaning. Colleagues talked about TV series, office gossip, bold complaints, and Elias just nodded, no longer able to care about the trivialities that once filled his life. He tried to tell a close friend, mentally rehearsed several times, finally finding the courage over a beer on a Friday. He began to speak. I was abducted. I saw the future of humanity on a planet called TRAPPIST-1E, and saw his friend's expression changing. First curiosity, then concern, then pity. Dude, you need to sleep more. Maybe see a therapist. The stress of remote work is affecting you. Elias stopped trying to explain to skeptics. It hurt too much to see disbelief, to see the most important truth of his life reduced to delusion or lies. So, he fell silent, returned to his daily meditation. But now it was different. He wasn't just silencing his mind, but trying to access that frequency he had felt in TRAPPIST-1E, trying to remember the sensation of telepathic love. And some nights he could touch something, a glimpse, a distant echo, enough to know that he hadn't imagined it, that it was real, absolutely real. Weeks passed and Elias noticed a change in himself, small but growing, patience increasing, judgment decreasing. When someone was rude in traffic instead of anger, he felt curiosity about what pain that person carried. When he saw news about violence instead of despair, he felt compassion for everyone involved, knowing that they were lost consciousnesses at a low frequency. He was practicing without realizing it the 5 instructions he had received: radical empathy, daily gratitude, seeing unity, consciously manifesting, and unconditional love. And then synchronicities began. He found an online article about the law of collective attraction, written by a quantum physicist he'd never heard of. He attended a lecture on the evolution of consciousness, and the speaker said things that echoed exactly what the alien had said. An acquaintance posted on social media about a dream where he visited a red planet with telepathic humans, details too specific to be a coincidence. Elias understood what the Golden Woman had said. The network was being activated. Others were awakening simultaneously, and he wasn't alone. He never had been. There was a silent army of high-frequency carriers scattered across the planet, each one participating without fully knowing it, preparing the ground for a transition that would take centuries, but had already begun. 3 months after returning, Elias sat in the same chair where it all began. The apartment dark, except for the light from the computer, the camera positioned in front of him, the recorder on, and he stared into the lens as if it were a confessional. He had tried to forget, tried to return to normal life, but it was impossible. The truth burned inside like an unquenchable ember, and he finally understood that the mission was not optional. It was inevitable. Either he told the story or he would suffocate, simple as that. He pressed the red record button, took a deep breath, and began. My name is Elias. I'm 36 years old. I work as a programmer in Boston. A completely ordinary life. And 3 months ago, I was taken by an alien to a planet called TRAPPIST-1E, and what I saw there changed everything I think about humanity, about our future, about where we're going. I know it sounds crazy. I know half of you will stop watching here, but for those who stay, for those who resonate with this story, it's for you that I tell it. Elias spoke for 40 minutes recounting everything. Conscious abduction, an impossible red planet, evolved telepathic humans, a society without money, government, or war. A memory hall showing Earth's evolution. 5 instructions to raise frequency. An encounter with an elder revealing future reincarnation. Failed civilizations. Urgency without guarantees. Transformative return. And when he finished, when he pressed stop, he knew he had crossed a line. There was no turning back. He had publicly become that guy who claims to have been abducted, and his professional career was probably over. But it didn't matter anymore. A greater purpose had been found. He posted a video that night without heavy editing, just basic cuts, a direct title. I was taken to TRAPPIST-1E by an alien, and what I saw there will keep you up at night. Published it on a video platform at 2:00 the morning and went to sleep without expectations. He woke up 9 hours later, checked his cell phone, 15,000 views, 400 comments, and his hands trembled as he scrolled, half mocking, calling it a fraud, delusional, schizophrenic, asking for hospitalization. But the other half, said things that made Elias cry. I had an identical dream 2 months ago. A red planet, telepathic humans. I didn't tell anyone because I was afraid, but you just described exactly what I saw. I cried watching this. I don't know why, but something inside me knows it's true. I recognize this future as if I had been there. I've been practicing meditation for years and received a similar download. Not a physical visit, but telepathic information about the collective evolution of humanity. You are not alone. I always knew we were destined for something greater. This story confirms what my heart already knew. Thank you for having the courage to share. Weeks turned into months. The video slowly but consistently went viral. Not an instant explosion, but organic growth. People sharing it in spiritual groups, consciousness forums, meditation communities. It reached 1 million views, then 5 million. Comments now in the tens of thousands. And Elias saw a pattern, people awakening, changing, applying the 5 instructions, reporting synchronicities, some even receiving their own visits or dreams, confirming the information. The network activating exactly as the Golden Woman had said. Elias began receiving private messages, hundreds daily, from people recounting transformations, marriages being saved through radical empathy, depressions, healing through the practice of gratitude, life purpose being found through conscious manifestation, small changes multiplying in waves. And he understood it didn't matter if they literally believed in abduction. What mattered was that the message resonated, that truth in the heart was touched, that frequency began to rise, objective, fulfilled, regardless of skepticism about details. And now, 6 months after his return, Elias was recording this video, a more refined version, an experience distilled into the narrative you just heard. And looking at the camera, he said, "If you've made it this far, if you've watched the whole story, you're exactly who needs to hear this. It's not an accident. It's not a random algorithm. It's synchronicity. You were guided here because something inside is ready to awaken, ready to remember that you are not just a material body struggling to survive, but an eternal consciousness on a journey of evolution. The truth that the alien showed me, which society on TRAPPIST-1E embodies, and which each of us urgently needs to understand is this. Evolution is not individual. It is collective. You cannot ascend alone, leaving humanity behind. Everyone ascends together, or no one ascends. This is the design of the universe. Interconnected consciousnesses in an invisible web, where the elevation of one pulls all others along. The earth is not sick by accident. Wars don't happen by chance. Suffering is not random. All of this is a symptom of low collective frequency. Humanity vibrating in fear, separation, scarcity, and the universe responding with a reality that corresponds to this vibration. The law of attraction doesn't work only individually but planetarily. What we think collectively, what we feel collectively, manifests as collective reality. When the majority of humanity lives in fear of not having enough, of not being enough, of losing what they have, reality reflects this. We create systems based on competition, accumulation, protection. We build walls between nations, between classes, between hearts, and we call this normal, realistic, when in fact, it is merely a reflection of low frequencies crystallized in social structures. But change doesn't come from destroying external structures. It comes from raising internal frequency. When a sufficient number of people shift their vibration from fear to love, from scarcity to abundance, from separation to unity, external structures crumble on their own, and new ones emerge naturally. You can't force utopia with violent revolution. You just plant seeds of higher consciousness and watch the garden grow organically. The 5 instructions I received are not complicated techniques accessible only to enlightened individuals. They are simple practices that anyone can do right now, today, at this moment. First, radical empathy. When someone irritates you today, stop and ask what pain that person carries, what fear motivates their behavior. When you understand the wound behind the attack, anger dissolves into compassion, and compassion is a frequency that heals both you and the other person. Secondly, felt gratitude, not a mechanical list, but genuine emotion. Wake up tomorrow and before checking your phone, find 3 things to be grateful for and feel gratitude throughout your body. Warmth in your chest, peace in your stomach, because gratitude instantly changes body chemistry. Cortisol goes down, serotonin goes up, and energetic vibration rises. Doing this daily for 30 days measurably changes your life. Third, see unity in everything. The next time you judge someone, remember that in slightly different circumstances, you would make the same choice. In another life, you may have been that person. We are all a single consciousness, experiencing billions of perspectives simultaneously. When you hurt another, you hurt an aspect of yourself. When you love another, you love an aspect of yourself. Separation is a convincing illusion, but still an illusion. Fourth, consciously manifest. Stop focusing on bad news. Stop feeding your mind with violence and catastrophe. Yes, the world has problems, but attention is creative energy. The more you focus on fear, the more you create a fearful reality. Redirect your attention to the world you desire. Visualize humanity at peace, a healed earth, people living in harmony. Don't escape reality, but plant seeds of a better reality through intentional focus. Fifth, to love unconditionally. Not romantic love dependent on reciprocation, but love as a conscious decision, a state of being, choosing to want the well-being of the other, regardless of whether they like you or not, whether they agree with you or not. Unconditional love is the highest frequency accessible to humans. It's impossible to hold anger or judgment when you love in this way, and unconditional love is contagious, spreading through resonance, even without words. If everyone on Earth consistently practiced these 5 things, the transition to TRAPPIST-1E type reality would happen in generations, not millennia. But it doesn't need everyone. An alien said 51% critical mass, and we are closer than it seems. Global meditation movements, accelerating spiritual awakening. Young people rejecting materialism, growing environmentalism. Signs are everywhere that upliftment has already begun. It just hasn't been televised because the media focuses on drama, not silent evolution. You watching this now are part of that critical mass. You are not a passive observer, you are an active participant. Your frequency matters. Your thoughts create your daily choices between love and fear, literally shape the collective future. The weight of responsibility may seem great, but it is also empowering. You are not powerless. You are not a victim of a broken system. You are an agent of change, with real power to influence the planetary trajectory through heightened consciousness. Alien told me that I am a messenger not because I am special, but because I am willing. The same goes for you. You don't need to be a saint, or a guru, or special. You just need to be willing. Willing to feel when the world encourages numbness. Willing to love when hatred seems justified. Willing to believe in a better future when the present seems bleak. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being willing. Thank you for being part of the solution. Until TRAPPIST-1E.